Good day, INFJ community, and those who desire to learn from INFJ wisdom. I'm your host, Vila Ramsey, and I'm going to be contributing a lot to this series, so I thought I should introduce myself. Yes, I am an INFJ. Yes, I have medical issues. I'm not wearing any makeup currently, and I am going to be an advocate for environmental health because I have major medical issues because of a lot of environmental reasons. I have made a list so that way I can try to get through points quickly as I'm introducing myself and what it means to be an INFJ, which I will be going over what it means more to be about an INFJ in later episodes. This one's my first one. I'm just doing my best to put something out there. What an INFJ is about, or the entire premise of it. It actually has to do with the Myers Briggs. Myers Briggs was created over 70 years ago, and it is based off the research by by Carl Jung, who then other people got a hold of his information. He was an INFJ, and he figured out that different people had different personality types. It has evolved a lot over the last 70 years. A person that I would highly recommend in order to learn more about this topic from would be C.S. Joseph. He has done amazing work and has helped me a lot in my understanding of what it means to be an INFJ for myself and understanding other personality types. Basically, it's really difficult for INFJs to understand a lot of other people and other personality types. So, psychology, pretty much the entire field of psychology, and definitely stuff from Myers Briggs, is set up for the INFJ mind in order to much more rapidly and easily understand human psychology. Taking a look at the INFJ chart, I have one here currently from Pinterest, for which it is that I am going to be showing. You'll see that there's 16 different personality types. In these 16 personality types, there are 8 cognitive functions. A brief understanding of what this is: it's just 8 functions, which pretty much everything in the entire spectrum of human personality can fall into these 8 basic functions with some so spiritual things aren't in there. If somebody's like a sociopath, those things aren't going to be in there. There are some things too, which people will do some things that are more interesting for when it comes to abuse. For some of that's not in there. And then depending upon too who certain people are around, some of that stuff might not fully show up either. Going back to the cognitive functions, there is internal sensing and external sensing. Basically, what it means for something to be internal or external is somebody getting the information from inside of their body, or are they getting it from outside of their body? Anything that somebody gets from inside of their body is going to be a lot more powerful and a lot there's going to be a lot more skills and a lot more skill sets from anything that is internal than anything that comes from someplace that's external. Everybody has all of these functions, but it's going to depend upon on how easily certain ones are able to be developed. Things for, like, say, that would go into the internal sensing section that I have noted. Cooking is one of those. Having to deal with writing stories and books. Anything dealing with medicine pretty much goes into the internal sensing section. These are also going to be people that are highly sensitive to what it is that they eat. They tend to be foodies. They tend to be, very sensitive to what kind of clothing items are put onto them, or smells. That would be an internal sensing person. An external sensing person, very cleanly, or they're cleaners. Number one, generally speaking, tend to be very physically fit. They're going to be your exercise gurus, people who want to have to put a lot of physical effort and into anything moving around the physical world. Those, in any way, shape, or form, those are going to be people that are very high in external sensing. I really tend to like using sensing, or how somebody senses, as a visual representation of helping me to determine personality type. Somebody who is an internal sensor, very high internal sensor, they will oftentimes not want to move around. They can sit on their butts a lot or game a lot because they don't want to cause themselves any kind of physical pain. Whereas external sensors, especially when it is their top 3 functions, they can unfortunately go into a category of being highly physically abusive. So this would be a couple of other distinctions between internal sensing and external sensing. Introverted intuition and the extroverted intuitions. When INFJs are very high in introverted intuition, it is considered our hero function, or one of the primary things that it is that we do. It is pattern recognition. It's one of the reasons why psychology exists, in that it is taking a whole bunch of individual items and traits and looking for patterns in them. And that then is how diagnoses are created. That's how, like, also medical diagnoses can happen, for things to be categorized into books. Because otherwise all you have is a bunch of individual details that would be spread out everywhere, and there would be nothing bringing a number of things together. Now, granted, I already went over internal sensing. Internal sensing is seeing things in a very fine detail for all the little intricacies, whereas introverted intuition is seeing broad spectrum patterns. It's rather the difference between, like, if you have a bunny rabbit as being like an internal sensing person, and then you have a hawk as a internal intuition person. They have completely different perspectives for how it is that they see the world between the two of them, and it's can be quite difficult for either one to get the other's perspective. It's one of the reasons why I'm bringing this up, because I have spent decades trying to figure out how to do stuff for internal sensing. And however, I've noticed that at times internal sensors can have a really difficult time trying to see anything for pattern recognition, or seeing anything bigger picture. Internal intuition also will have to deal with spirituality. It's basically like being able to see not just that there's patterns to life, like how there's sacred geometry, but how it is that life responds to your actions. So there's actually certain things like the game of life and how to play it, and Buddhism and the such, where they actually find and have found rules to how the universe works. People have been around for a very long time, so people have actually put things together. I mean, supposedly Adam in the Bible lived 900 years. What, you didn't think that after all that time that he wasn't going to find that there was potentially certain patterns as to how the universe was constructed, or how to potentially speak or interact with a huge energetic field that was around him? I mean, that's all that atoms and protons and neutrons and everything is intelligent substance for everything that it is that we float or move in. But yeah, there's patterns to that, and that tends to be something that is that then internally intuitive people find. For external intuitive people, and sorry, this also deals with futures as well, or future perspectives, like seeing patterns for how certain people, or what happens. It's like, if A plus B tends to go into C, they're gonna see people's actions constantly from cause and effect for certain things happening over and over and over again. So it's not really a thing where they are actually seeing the future, but can projectively see the future because of understanding the rules of cause and effect and knowing that this is a cause and effect universe. External intuition people often don't look at their own cause and effect situations, but more or less other people's. They're usually worried about other people's stories or where it is that they might go. It's one of the things for the ENTP, which is the lawyer personality type, for which if you look on the Myers Briggs chart for that, you will see that they not only have truth, so it's going to be internal thinking for knowing that, which we're going to go over. It deals with truth, but they have extroverted intuition, so they are very concerned about what other people's futures are, so it's one of the reasons why they represent them in law. Then they also are very big on internal sensing. Internal sensing deals with stories, so they're huge on that as well. And then their child function is it's extroverted as being FE, which is other people's feelings. So that's how it is that for the ENTP, being in law or being in careers similar to law fits their personality type very well. For the INFJ, we it's pattern recognition. We have truth, for which it is that we're very interested in. Oftentimes, things for external sensing comes in. And then there's external feelings. So whereas we care about truth, we care about other people's feelings, we care about looking for pattern recognition, that very much so has psychology written all over it.
There are internal feelers and there are external feelers. Internal feelers, when combined with traits such as internal sensing, can be excellent storytellers. They can be directors. You're looking at somebody who can do something for the Lord of the Rings, somebody who can bring any kind of story to life with emotions, and thus can be extremely manipulative. Feelers, when it comes to crossing that with internal intuition, you're looking at artists. You're looking at people who can bring wonders to people's eyes for the kind of creations that it is that they can make, and the limits, and basically there's no limits, especially with their feelings and their willpower to continue to get anything and everything done. Also, when it comes to a feeler with having high internal sensing, these people can be absolutely excellent doctors. They can pretty much feel with inside the other person, sense and feel what medically is going wrong with that person just by being next to them and their own life experiences. And that's often how it is that they will heal themselves, is just by analyzing their own internal state of being. However, they do tend to project, as feeling is often the opposite of considered thinking or logic. These two things really need to be balanced out in order for somebody to get the full picture of something. When your feelings take you away, you can't think logically. And then if you're only thinking logically, you're oftentimes missing the entire rest of the world, nature, stuff dealing with spirituality. With an external feeler, they are your customer service agents. They are the people who are the caretakers, the people who help watch children and take care of the elderly, and will oftentimes be involved in medicine as well, not necessarily at the higher levels, but will also be people who do teaching. They very much so tend to extend themselves to other people because they very much so care, because other people's feelings are their feelings. So when somebody else is in pain or in hurting, they are in pain and are hurting, and have to often work hard in order not to absorb other people's feelings around them if they're wanting to keep peace inside of themselves.
So one of the things I have very much so noticed between internal feeling and external feeling is that internal feelers have the ability to just like shut their emotions down. They can pretty much go sociopathic on somebody and completely ignore the rest of humanity if they want to. Whereas that's a lot harder to do for an external feeler to be able to do, because they're an external feeler. That's where it is their source, their information comes from. They generally it's a weaker function, but they generally don't shut it off. Whereas the other one, they'll just, I find it to be ironic. There'll be a number of people out there, they'll get all angry and they'll be like, you don't feel about the rest of the world. Like, and then they'll be all angry and I hate you and you're a horrible person and all. And it'll generally be the feelers themselves who will hate themselves, because it's the feelers which will shut down their emotions oftentimes for when it comes to feeling for other people's things, and then they hate their own selves, their own personality types for it when they shut themselves down. So that is, it's a shout out, and then they and there will also be too, like something else I'll go over for projection, as to how it is that a lot of times on these feelers, you'll see on the news or a number of other things, they'll accuse everybody else of doing the exact same thing, of shutting down their emotions and not caring, because they have the ability to shut down their emotions and not care, when other people aren't doing that. But they'll accuse everybody else of doing it, and it's extremely obnoxious. But I'm just stating that it's a pattern for that it is that I have noticed. So back onto the functions. Then there is external thinking and internal thinking. This is the primary function for the INFJ. It is the child function, as can be seen on the INFJ list, and I'll go over this. Anything that is basically, if it's a function, or since there are 8 cognitive functions on the INF, or on the the Myers Briggs personality chart. If you look at it, there's the first 4, which on this one it says leading, support, relief, aspirational. Those are the top 4. Those are generally the strongest abilities each personality type has. Then you go into oftentimes what are called the subconscious functions, or otherwise ones that aren't very strong, or they take until you're closer to 90 or later on in life, unless there's trauma in order to develop. And on this chart it says opposing, the critical parent, deceiving, and devilish. For the INFJ, it is called on here relief, or Tatari. It is oftentimes called the child function as well. This basically is the first function as a baby that it's developed about the age of 3 or so, that personality type really puts in. So for an INFJ, that is internal thinking. It is otherwise known as truth and or logic. So that does make it the INFJ, and the ISFJ also shares this truth and logic as being child functions. And at this, oftentimes, like for me as being an INFJ, how you'll have little kids, they'll run around and they'll be like, why, mommy, why does that happen? Tell me, I want to know. Yeah, to me that's never stopped. I am constantly looking for whys on hows on things. It is just part of my development, and you may find that you are also the same way like that, as well as being an INFJ, where it's like you want to know why for things. ISFJs, they don't necessarily, they kind of rather figure it out on their own. They don't necessarily, ask or look into it, or it just kind of comes to them, and they eventually kind of get things figured out. They're not big on the research by any stretch of the means, but they can still figure out what's true, what's not, as it's just an inborn child function gift, and then you have your own life, your whole life, to develop it and to get better at it. And So for like an example, law is supposed to be based off of truth and logic, and that is just something that it's like, well, it's like a duh to us, like for INFJs, because it's like certain things, it's like, well, you're looking at things, and sometimes, yeah, you might think too, oh, that's stupid. You're like, why would anybody do that? That's so not logical. How did you come up with that as an answer? However, you, it doesn't necessarily come across as that, is that you're thinking that other people are stupid. Most of the time you're like, wait, what? Did I miss something? Like, how did that happen? Because for the longest time, without knowing that I was an INFJ or where it was that I stood, everybody else seemed to be making a whole bunch of decisions. I had no idea how they were coming up with the answers for that. And I didn't realize that INFJs are oftentimes considered one of the smarter personality types, at least as far as being understanding how to think, or how to think logically, or how to come up with proper solutions. INFJs tend to become doctors and psychologists if we live long enough to get out of childhood, to not die, which oftentimes we're busting our butts off trying to learn stuff about medicine, or trying to learn how to survive with our willpower, which is considered our leading function, in order not to die, because we get the strangest medical issues.
Since INFJs have a lot of trouble understanding their internal sensing and abilities to be able to balance anything out, that is why it is extremely important to eat the healthiest food possible. Really, if you're not eating and you haven't figured out organic is what makes sense, and also having raw, fresh fruits and vegetables is what'll make sense to help heal you, make the switch, because that would just be the bright thing to do.
The TI function and the TE function, generally with the TE function, these are people who want to know your source. They want to go with popular belief. Internal thinkers, no. We come up with our own conclusions from what it is that we see most of the time. We can listen to other people's perspectives. We're not necessarily so concerned on where things come from. And for a broader point of view, I would have to state that this is probably what it is that I've come up with on that, or why that is. And from a spiritual perspective in this.
If God exists, for which he definitely does, because all things have to be created somehow, as all things have a maker, and everything in the universe is extremely intelligent, all full of sacred geometry, and then it's a cause and effect universe for how everything is put together, with many different layers to it, including all kinds of spiritual aspects. God is the Alpha and the Omega, thus God is at the beginning and at the end. That would make a logical sense that God is also everything that is in between. As God is everything that is in between and the creator of all things, that means all things, of course, then comes from God. Thereby, I'm not very concerned about the who, what, or where things came from, because all of that came from God. I'm more interested in wanting to know the why and the how, because that to me is where the fascination lies. And so with TE thinkers and their desire to constantly want to vet their sources, to know where their sources come from, I figure all sources have to eventually lead back to God. So to me, that's not as important as knowing the hows and whys, because when you know the hows and whys, then you're able to put all of the pieces together to create a full picture, instead of having, a half truth here or a half truth there, or, whole truth here. You're able to put it all together into one bigger picture to be able to then figure out where exactly the truth is. Truth for an INFJ is said to be like a big tree, for which it is an INFJ can see from a leaf all the branches to the trunk, all the way down to the tip of the roots for how truth or how the structure of something is put together. Because truth and structure go together. TE thinkers, oftentimes, they don't have any structure. They have some branches and some sticks, but nothing is actually connected or goes together because they compartmentalize their understanding of reality instead of having many different subjects all overlay and have appropriate and proper connections throughout all of them for what would then be truly real for how things have to be constructed instead of pretending how things are constructed because of using imagination instead of actually putting all the parts together.
Topic of one of the major reasons why I am doing this video. It is to share the wisdom that it is that I have received over multiple decades for how to heal yourself and empowerment for healing yourself. INFJs can have a really one of the things about being an INFJ is that you can have a ton of different medical issues because you can't feel yourself internally. It's like your weakest function. It's the demon function that are on the charts. And I have had a ton of medical issues in part because of this. So outside of environmental damages, which I am going to get to the rest of the functions here before going into things.
NI and SE tend to pair together in personalities, and then SI and NE tend to pair together in personalities. So this is a way that it is to help for being able to figure out who has what personality type. Outside of that, the real most important thing is to understand that you have 8 functions, and a lot of people are living as a half of a human being. All 8 of these functions need to be developed because it's not just the individual functions that create a person and give them talents. It is the combination of all of these functions being able to interplay with each other in multiple different levels, which then brings a lot more interest and expertise into the world and clarity of perspective in so many different ways.
There's also been other major psychology issues, which have caused a slew of issues. Basically, I fall into the section of being a shaman. Shamans oftentimes have medical issues for which it is that they then learn from on a very intimate basis in order to then know how to heal these things so they can share this information with other people. Oftentimes, too, shaman are taught and trained by other shaman. I was taught and trained by another shaman for decades to help myself out, and I'm wanting to not only to regurgitate this information to anybody else who may need it, because since INFJs do have the opposite personality type of natural healers, but to also, if there's any INFPs out there who would like their own information just basically regurgitated back to them for what it is I have learned from high-level healers, to learn about how to heal yourself in a number of ways, and then to also, it's a combination of all the functions. So TI, like, it's the quality of the information. Like, does it make sense? Does it sound correct? Because it doesn't really matter who said it, because all information, and as all things are God's creation, all have the ability to channel or funnel or speak things out of the divine for that which is, of higher or greater intelligence, or to be able to, exude that. And that's why, as they say, miracles are a science that people just don't understand how to tap into, because, everything's always created by God, and thus miracles of different things have happened all the time. I have had absolutely interesting and fascinating spiritual adventures by far. That's part of why I'm here too, because God is wanting me to share my story. It was one of the things where I was told I've actually been rather delaying this for quite some period of time as to being on YouTube or trying to be on YouTube. I was told, I was asked actually by my eldest child multiple years ago to go on YouTube, and I didn't understand what the point would be. I was kind of playing Minecraft at that time, but she thought, oh, people would really like to see you play, Mom, and I was just like, I'm okay, kid. I didn't feel like as though I needed it, and uh, but as I kept being told since then that I have enough information, and I've been learning plenty. I kind of research for fun outside of I have needed to in order to stay alive, which is kind of why I'm doing what I'm doing right now, actually, for trying to put this together to be on YouTube, because yeah, I'm pretty good at having all kinds of interesting things happen in my life. God thinks so too. So I'm supposed to be sharing some of my ultra fun stories. Some of what I've been having to do lately is to learn how to deal with car parts and how to change out things in my own vehicle. So I have done the crankshaft sensor twice now. I have done camshaft sensor, which is someplace. This is my oil pressure thing. My oil pressure thing switch came out in pieces. I had to change out my alternator. My serpentine belt got eaten, so I worked on rescuing that. I helped then previously to this to try to help with many other sensors in my vehicle, and I'm currently living out in the Boontoolies, where it is that I don't have the ability to easily walk into town as I am halfway up a mountain. And that also makes cycling into town not the easiest adventure either. So after going to O'Reilly's and AutoZone several times over to use their electrical equipment to try to diagnose my vehicle, and then having to my car still breaking down after changing out all of the sensors. I had also to do the VVT sensor that needed to be changed. There's multiple other sensors too. It has just been a sensor mess. Drive me nuts for everything that's going on. I ended up breaking down at the bottom of the hill because the car couldn't get up as it lost power again. Had called a mobile mechanic and changed out the parts that he told me to change out, and the car still check engine light won't go off, and it's been on throughout the last 2 years. So I've been able to try to borrow rides for people. However, I had to move a couple of months ago, and my car's been broken down pretty soon since then. Becoming a book series author. I am doing a book series for adults and children on medicine, psychology, and other topics. I have had to learn things from when I was very young. As I stated, a lot of INFJs have major medical issues. I came from a household with toxic surrounding of arsenic, mercury, lead. This whole area here, it's actually all scarred from heavy metal poisoning, bone death. I'm gonna show you that it's not just my face. I'm bringing up my foot here, as you can see back behind around my foot on that side. This is all blood issues. My blood does not flow correctly. It made it so my toenails didn't grow in correct area. Itches extremely bad, as I've been working on getting out the lead and mercury poisoning already previous to this, and I've now been working on the arsenic poisoning for the last couple of years. Also, I came from a household with, unfortunately, my mother having narcissistic issues and my father having brain damage issues. So that led to having 3 brothers that passed along the torture and punches. And the combination of stressors created potentially fatal hormone imbalance, which caused my chi to even disattach from my blood. And the massive sugar issues, I mean, just on and on and on, for all of my organs having issues. I definitely, with the hormone imbalance, the additional stress in my household, I never should have received a single vaccination ever. I have also, part of this also is, for me, detoxing 26 rounds of vaccine damage outside of my system. I have been being treated for stuff for that, and I would like to be able to share that information with viewers as well, for as it's one of the books that it is that I'm working on. Outside, I have a book on also for how to be your own dentist, all of this stuff that it is that I'm doing. I am trying to teach people how to do it for themselves. Save yourself medical bills, and give you resources so that way you can find self-healing. This also includes that has led all these medical issues have led to major organ damage issues, and I've had like acute pancreatitis. I've had a heart attack. You can see on my tongue. I know it's going to be gross, and I'm trying to stay back a little. You probably don't really want to see my face very much for all the damage, but all the bumps for the ridges, that's the spleen having issues. And the foot that it was that I showed you too, that's also because the spleen is having issues, and that's where it comes out in reflexology. Center of the tongue, I have all kinds of splits, and that comes from my blood not working correctly, as I was also pointing that out on my foot as well, that my blood doesn't flow correctly. I do know that my tongue is wider. I've had to go through candida detoxification multiple times, and learning how to do at-home testing for that. Let's see. Okay. And then and then also, not growing up in a healthy family or environment, I ended up then dating psychologically, which would be called level 2 sociopaths, or at least was back in the time when I went to college and I started learning stuff on psychology, more so there, and to narcissists, and then unfortunately losing all 3 of my children through parental alienation. So, yes, I understand what loss and trauma is. I'm planning on going over topics for that. God tells me that I have the ability to basically release traumas within a matter of months than what would take people oftentimes years in order to go through. And I cannot say I started out with this. I definitely had post-traumatic stress disorder, if you want to call it complex post-traumatic stress disorder. I thought there should be a whole category for advanced complex post-traumatic stress disorder for the level of everything that was being gone through. I've read stuff for things for Holocaust victims and other things like that, and I know they said that, what you're looking at is, what you're looking for is purpose, and I was like, no, at a particular point, it really just boils down to love. It's just love of any kind, and the desperation is horrible when you're at that level. And so that's why a lot of this also has to deal with learning how to do stuff for self-love, because I had to work extremely hard for everything that it was that I could in order to turn my life around. I was technically past the point where death would normally take a person by the time I was 12 years of age. The reason why I wasn't dead was actually because of spiritual reasons. It was more or less a thing of I either had to learn how to grow up out of all of the pain and torture that I was in and correct things, or continue to be tortured and be past and live past the point where death would normally take somebody. So I chose to do everything that I could to grow. I I started dancing when I was very young. My mother started teaching me when I was 4, and so I had spent many years already dancing and teaching dance that I had, and I'd also in a strange twist of fate, as I've had to come to learn a lot about soul growth, where people come from and where souls come from. So I've definitely learned about reincarnation, that I this whole life for me also has been about fixing things for stuff for reincarnation, and for also the bloodline that this body came from, in order to fix generational traumas. So those are also other topics that this is going to cover. But and I will also cover suicide prevention topics as well. As I have had to come to learn, I was raised in a Catholic household, but I did come to learn that reincarnation is a thing. It actually was a thing in the early church, and it was for Judaism. That was stuff that they later changed to try to make people pay to get into heaven and to gain greater control by saying, no, this is your only life, and that there's not something after this. You either go one way or the other, which I have come to learn from experience. That's not true. I committed suicide in my last life. I'm currently here. I know how I did. I know why I did. And suicide does not get you out of anything. I will tell you that flat out. It only immerses you even more so into whatever it is that you committed suicide for. I did not commit suicide because I did not like my life. I actually committed suicide to help somebody else out of demonic possession. Yeah, my stories are going to get real interesting. So if you want to stick around for some of the stuff that I've come up with, I've had quite the interesting life. So, okay, yep. So most everything that I have done in this life has been to stay alive. Yeah, so what was I was doing before this? So before my car broke down, the last year I was pretty much learning about law. I was writing a writ of habeas corpus. I didn't even know what it was originally that I was doing, but because of logic and medical studies and my ability for dance, I actually applied to be an expert witness for a case. Guy's innocent. He's got a life sentence, and for a crime that never even happened. And yet, unfortunately, state of California, Del Norte County, they allowed that to happen. So I applied to be an expert witness under understanding psychological principles, also as an independent natural medicine consultant, as I have had to learn a lot about all different kinds of medicines, trying to heal myself. And also for understanding normal human movements. I do have an AA from Clark Community College. Should have been an AS, but whatever. It was just my own myth. And I did graduate before my health got too bad from the University of Washington. I was originally starting out as a double major in psychology and dance at the time. I was thinking about triple majoring in art. I ended up starting to study and had to take a 300 level anatomy course for graduation requirements, and then I ended up from there on and through now I have been studying medicines of all kinds, natural medicines. I'd nearly gotten everything complete for the psychology BA. However, I had all kinds of fun things, like as I said, those sociopaths and other people outside of class. So I was spending a lot of time in those libraries learning about all kinds of stuff that they were not teaching me in school. But for that case, I put in over 100 pages of testimony as to how poorly the more or less perjury, prosecutional misconduct, that it was that they forced a plea agreement, malicious conduct or malicious prosecution, and then how the judge needed to be recused. So I put in information on all of those things. I backed everything up as well as I could through medicine, psychology, and physical fitness and law. Let's see. My aunt, just for other things, for background, for history on me, for education. She was one of the first people in the United States Army Nurse Corps to hold the position of Lieutenant Colonel. She vetted me. I ended up being her primary caretaker for the last 5 years of her life, as long as the rest of my family. And so I ended up also being her sole heir and the executive to her will. for some of the other things that it is that outside of getting a divorce, for other things that it is I've had to be doing in the legal section. Let's see. Pretty much I read, since the truth is my child function, I listen to all kinds of stories, true stories, for my bedtime stories. So I figure I'll either learn something or it'll help put me to sleep. So there's a lot of other topics I have also covered. I do things with history, teaching, parenting, homeschooling, spirituality, past religion, for studies, tools, as I was saying about changing things out on my vehicle, gardening, which, by the way, none of my car breaking down has, outside of the serpentine belt getting caught, I've actually been doing really good. So I do not know what is up with the rest of the car, and neither does anybody else, and neither did the tech. I had to call a mobile mechanic. He said that he was amazed that I was doing the work myself as well, and that I was doing as good of a job as it was. Also, organic gardening and animal care will also be potentially in some of the other topics that will be covered for self-empowerment and education. I'm here also for homeschooling, for people who are new to a lot of these topics, to bring in very easy, as I'm doing books, children's books, very easy to read. I have gone from dating level 2 sociopaths to now I'm on my twin flame journey, which is a religious journey that's usually found in Buddhism. So I grow very fast. Since I grow so fast, I have helped other people grow years faster in their education than the other would normally do so, which is one of the reasons why God wants me to help teach people, so that way they can grow faster in their self-evolution as well. My goal is to collect and present knowledge truthfully and logically, simply, as best as I can for others, and also for other INFJs and logical thinkers of all ages. So I do thank you very much. Please like, share, and subscribe. I guess it's part of what I'm supposed to say here at the end. If any of this sounds interesting, and hopefully I'll be able to get into interesting stories after this, I just wanted to give a basic overview as to who I am, what my goals are. So in case you're like, who is this person? How is it that they're claiming these particular things? What's their education level? For all those TE thinkers out there, because I am more than likely everything I'm going to be doing is mostly for TI thinkers. This is your video. So I would give thanks to the universe for all that it is that you would like to receive, and follow your joy. Peace.